Hi, my name's James Hewitt and I'm an accredited exercise physiologist with iFitness Exercise Physiology on the Central Coast. Thanks for joining us through this Exercise 101 course. In this video, I'm going to be looking at incidental activity. And initially when we were looking at this series, we were thinking that we might include incidental activity with the other videos. However, the more we thought about this, the more we realised that it deserved its own video. And so I think of this like a bit of an added bonus. Incidental activity is more important than you might think. And I suspect you may find the information in this section a bit shocking, because I know I did when I first heard it. So let's get started. So first things first, what is incidental activity? So incidental activity is really any activity that you do as part of your normal daily routine, where the purpose of the activity is something other than improving your health in some way. And that may be done for a long period of time, or it might be a short period of time, it might be a high intensity, it might be a low intensity, but really the key difference here is that it's done for a purpose other than that of a health benefit. So an example of this might be that if you go to the shops, you might spend an hour, say, walking around the shops. However, it might not really be at a rate that challenges your body all that much, and you might find yourself stopping frequently to compare products, or you might bump into your neighbour and have a bit of a chat. And so it doesn't really stress your cardiovascular system out all that much. And also the purpose of that is to get your grocery shopping. It's not really to improve your health. Another example might be if you're walking to the train station and you see your train about to pull out. And so you sprint as hard as you can and you run so fast and you're really out of breath and you just get into the doors as they close and you have to sit down for a while and catch your breath. Now, in this example, we're actually doing really hard, intense activity, but it's done for a really short period of time and not probably enough to get any therapeutic benefit out of. And again, the purpose of it is really just to get on your train and go to work, rather than necessarily going for a sprint so that you can improve your fitness. Hope that makes sense. So of course, many incidental activities can become exercise with the right motivation and structure. So for example, you might have a really large backyard, and normally you would use a ride-on mower to cut the grass. If you decided that you wanted to do more aerobic activity to get your fitness up, you might decide that, okay, well, instead of using the ride-on mower, I'm going to do half my lawn with a push mower, or maybe all my lawn with a push mower. And the purpose of that, I'm going to do it in such a way that I get my breathing up a little bit, and I'm going to do that so I can get more activity and more aerobic activity and improve my fitness. And so suddenly you can see where just because the way you've structured that activity and the motivation behind that activity and how you've pushed yourself within that activity, it becomes more exercise even though it's just a daily task. So again, I hope that makes sense. So what's the benefit of incidental activity? So I know that we've talked previously about, when we're talking about the benefits of exercise, we're talking about the benefits of exercise and not necessarily incidental activity, even though incidental activity may achieve some of those things incidentally. But if incidental activity doesn't necessarily result in those classic exercise benefits, why even bother with it at all? Why is it important? Why spend a whole video talking about it? Well, the reason is, if you're doing lots of incidental activity and you're always working in the garden and you're walking around the shops and you're playing with the kids and the grandkids, what are you not doing very much of? Sitting, right? And there's a growing body of evidence which is really interesting, showing the negative effect of prolonged inactivity and what that does to our health. So I'm going to talk about a couple of studies. There'll be a bit of numbers here, so I apologise, but bear with me because it's interesting. One study looked at TV viewing in over 460,000 people. It was a really big study. And it looked at how TV watching affected your all-cause mortality risk, which, as we've talked about before, is your risk of dying from any really preventable cause, or basically anything that's not an accident. And the study found that if you watched more than 3 hours of TV a day, it increased your risk of premature death, except if you were in the top tier of weekly activity, which, bear with me for a moment because it uses some confusing terms. I'll explain it. I'll give you some context for it in just a sec. So it defined the top tier of physical activity as doing over 35.5 met hours of exercise a week. Now, to give you some context, 7 hours a week of brisk walking, so an hour a day of brisk walking, would be about 21 met hours. So 35.5 met hours is a lot of activity through the week. And so what they were saying is, unless you were doing 35.5 met hours, unless you were really, really active all the time, even just watching 3 hours of TV a day actually increased your all-cause mortality risk. That's pretty big. What's more, if you watch 5 hours or more of TV a day, it increased your risk of premature death, regardless of how much physical activity you did. So what this is saying is that no amount of physical activity could undo the detrimental effects on your health that was incurred from long periods and regular periods of inactivity. And even just watching for between 3 to 5 hours a day meant that you had to do 75 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity per day just to offset the negative impacts of prolonged sitting. And you might have noticed that 75 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per day is actually more than what the Australian guidelines recommend that you do. So it's entirely possible that you could be meeting the Australian guidelines for physical activity, yet still having some degree of negative impact on your health due to prolonged sitting and prolonged inactivity. So this has led to a bit of a phenomenon that we've dubbed the active couch potato. When I read this study, and others like it, I was really, really shocked. This is, of course, average TV time over a long period of time, of course, and it's not to say that having a lazy Sunday afternoon a few times a year is likely to cause you to die prematurely. But I bet if you sat down and really honestly looked at how much time you spent being sedentary through the day, it'd probably shock you. The other thing to note about this study is it only looked at TV viewing time, and so you could reasonably assume that TV viewing time is not the only period of inactivity through the day. Other studies have suggested that this increase in mortality, regardless of physical activity, seemed to occur around 7 to 9 hours a day of total inactivity time, which might sound a lot, but it's actually not that hard to amass. So let me talk you through it. Imagine if you spend 15 minutes eating breakfast of a morning. You get in your car and drive 30 minutes to work. Let's say you have an active job and you only sit down maybe an hour through the day. Sit, eat your lunch for maybe 30 minutes, drive 30 minutes home, sit for 30 minutes to have dinner with the family, and maybe watch a show or two for an hour to unwind. You then may read a book, sit and listen to music or something, maybe 30 minutes before bed. So in this example, you could almost say that this is really the best case scenario. And I would say that most people would spend significantly more time being inactive through the day than that. And hands up, I'm probably guilty of that as well. So, however, even in this example, there is almost 5 hours of sedentary time through that day. So that example is almost a best case. And I would say that if people sat down and honestly looked at the amount of time that they were inactive through the day, I think it'd be a bit of a surprise, and I think probably people would spend more time than that 5 hours. I know I would be, probably most days. Let's look at a different example now that might be a little bit more close to home for some people. Just imagine that you have a desk job and you have to drive or catch public transport an hour each way. Maybe you eat your lunch at your desk because you've got deadlines that are piling up and you really have to get things done. And you might spend 8 to 10 hours a day sitting at your desk if you do this. So this really, really adds up. So why is incidental activity important? Well, it reduces your risk of dying prematurely. So this has also been a suggestion that sitting for long periods of time, even an hour at a time, results in the accumulation of little protein markers in your muscles that can become precursors to chronic diseases such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and simply breaking up that prolonged sitting can break up the formation of these protein markers and could reduce your risk of chronic disease. Now, that could be as simple as just literally standing up and sitting back down again. It could literally be standing up to go to the printer and back if you're at work. So it doesn't actually have to be much in this case. So I know all these studies sound a bit grim and sobering, but the good news is that simply looking at ways to move more in your day and sit less can negate all these issues that we're talking about with regards to inactivity. And it can do wonders for your health, and it doesn't even need to be structured exercise. It could be literally anything. If you love watching TV, great. Why not look at getting a treadmill or an exercise bike or even a set of floor pedals so that you can walk or ride while you're watching your shows, so that you're not just sedentary sitting there. Instead of sitting to read, why not listen to an audiobook as you go for a walk? If you can park the car a little bit further away and walk that last little bit, it both reduces time sitting in the car and increases your activity, might even save you a little bit on fuel every now and again. Even just getting up through the ads and walking around the lounge room is a good way to break up your sitting time. So if you're hearing this and thinking, I want to be more active, but I don't know what to do. Of course, we are more than happy to help you with this. However, there is another great resource that's been set up by one of our champion emergency doctors here on the Central Coast. So Dr. Ash Bowden, or perhaps more commonly known as Dr. Do More, has set up a fantastic activity search engine which you can find on the internet at www.do- or the more.live, and find activities around the Central Coast, if you're based on the coast, for you to try. And if you're not on the Central Coast, no worries. Jumping onto this site might actually give you some great ideas of things that you can do in your local area. I hope you found this look at incidental activity and indeed this series helpful for you. If you think someone you know could benefit from viewing this series, then please let them know about it. We would love to be able to help as many people as possible learn about physical activity and improve their health. That's what we're all about. This is our final video of the series, but don't forget to follow us on our socials or jump on our website and look for some helpful information there as well. And of course, if you would like to talk with one of our team and get some individual assessment and guidance about your exercise needs, then feel free to make an appointment. We would love to help you get started moving towards improving your health. I'm James Hewitt from iFitness Exercise Physiology. Till next time.